They're not carrying the show. What do you mean? What do you mean they're not carrying the show? We don't understand that.
Leah Remini swore she'd never find another TV husband after Kevin James, claiming he completely ruined her for anyone else because their chemistry was just too real.
Well, that just means that you'll be able to see the King of Queens from,
Not you and Charlotte, of course.
All of us, all the shows that we've done up to now.
They went from screaming at each other over scripts to filming intimate scenes that felt anything but acted out. Today, we'll look at why this chaotic bond became her gold standard, how they dodged Scientology issues together, and the secrets behind that sitcom magic. Casting chaos to chemistry. It was 1997, and according to reports from The List, Leah Remini was absolutely convinced her career was dead in the water. She had just starred in a sitcom called Fired Up, and just like the title suggested, the network absolutely roasted it, canceling the show after just one season. She felt totally washed up. Just another actor waiting for a callback that was never going to come. Now imagine being in that headspace, thinking you missed your big shot, when suddenly your agent calls with a weird pitch. CBS is developing a new comedy about a blue-collar guy in Queens, and they want her to read for the lead role opposite this stand-up comedian named Kevin James. Here's where it gets interesting. Because Kevin James was already attached to the project, and he was apparently really picky about who they cast as his wife. He was looking for someone who could handle his particular style of comedy, someone who could banter back and forth without getting intimidated. According to behind-the-scenes stories, James saw Remini's tape and immediately told producers that she was the one. He knew almost instantly that she had the exact right kind of energy to match his own. It was a massive gamble for the network, casting a somewhat unknown actor who had just flopped. But James felt confident that this was the pairing that would make the show work. According to a 2016 interview with Access Hollywood, Leah revealed that during that audition, Kevin didn't just banter, he actively protected her from network executives who were skeptical about her post-flop casting. He stood up in the room and declared that if it wasn't Leah, it wasn't going to be him. That moment of loyalty, risking his own spot to vouch for her, cemented a level of trust that went far beyond mere professionalism. It was the moment the screen husband became a real-life defender. She walks into the audition, and she isn't acting like some desperate person looking for a paycheck. Instead, she comes in totally honest and completely unimpressed, which is exactly what James was looking for. Reports indicate that the second they started reading the script together, the chemistry was just undeniable. It wasn't just that they knew their lines, it was how they reacted to each other in the pauses. Kevin James would ad-lib a line, and Leah Remini would instantly jump back with a sarcastic comment that was even funnier than what was written. They were essentially playing tag, but with words, and it was fast and brutal and absolutely hilarious. Now picture this scene. They are in a room full of network executives, and instead of performing a scene, they are basically roasting each other. They were finding a rhythm that is incredibly rare in Hollywood casting, where usually actors are just waiting for their turn to speak. Sources indicate that this audition wasn't about showing off acting chops. It was about showing off personality. They were finding the specific, slightly argumentative tone that would define their characters for the next 9 years. The executives in the room, who were probably looking at 20 other actresses that day, realized that this was something special. You have to wonder how many incredible on-screen pairings were missed, because executives were looking for someone who followed the script perfectly rather than someone who could bring it to life. It makes you think about all the auditions that happen every single day, where people are just going through the motions, never finding that spark. For Leah Remini and Kevin James, it was desperation on one side and a gut feeling on the other that created this magic. Think about that for a second. If Fired Up hadn't been canceled, she might never have taken that audition. If Kevin James hadn't been so insistent that she was the one, the network might have gone with someone safer. But they didn't. They went with this raw, almost chaotic energy that existed between them from the very first day. The producers recognized that this pairing felt real in a way that most sitcoms absolutely did not. It was messy, it was loud, and it was undeniably authentic. So, they got the green light, and The King of Queens officially started filming in 1998. The show went on to run for 219 episodes, which is a massive achievement in television. 9 seasons of playing husband and wife, 9 seasons of fighting, making up, and making people laugh. And it all started with that one weird, intense audition where they realized they could hold their own against each other. It's funny how those moments work out, where a failed show leads directly to the biggest role of your life. Have you ever had a moment where you thought you completely failed, only for that failure to lead to something way better than what you originally wanted? We've all had those moments where things just click in the weirdest ways. For them, it was the beginning of a partnership that lasted nearly a decade. But of course, that was just the beginning. The casting was one thing, but actually working together on set every single day is a totally different story. Those sparks, that chemistry, it was only going to be tested when the cameras were rolling and the pressure was on. The banter was just the warm-up act, and it was only a matter of time before the fights that they were acting out on screen started to bleed into their real-life relationship. Fights that forged fire. According to reports from TV Insider, the magic on the King of Queens set wasn't born out of polite professionalism, but rather a consistent daily ritual of screaming at each other over the absolute stupidest stuff imaginable. Picture this. They have to film an intimate kissing scene. The cameras are rolling, and instead of taking a moment to get into character, they've spent the last 20 minutes arguing about a line reading or a joke ownership battle. It sounds chaotic, and honestly, it was, but this constant friction was exactly what forged that fire people saw on screen. Leah Remini has actually been pretty vocal about this, explaining that these trivial spats were necessary to release the tension before they had to get close. And get this, because of these fights, the actual filming of those romantic moments took on a whole different energy. Sources indicate that for many of their kissing scenes, they wouldn't even make eye contact until the absolute last second. It was like they were avoiding looking at each other because they were too busy being annoyed, which, strangely enough, created an intense, pure heat when they finally did lock lips. It wasn't the kind of romantic slow-motion kiss you see in a rom-com. It was fast, messy, and felt entirely real. Remini has gone on record saying that despite all the yelling, they truly loved each other, and that chaotic energy was just their unique love language. Think about that for a second. In Hollywood, you often hear stories about actors needing quiet on set or needing to get into a specific mood, but for them, it was the opposite. They thrived on that conflict. They were essentially creating a bulletproof trust over 9 years by fighting about the small things. So when the big things happened, like navigating the pressures of a massive hit show, they knew they had each other's backs completely. It's a fascinating look into how real chemistry can sometimes thrive on conflict rather than polite perfection. Now you have to wonder, could you actually fight with a friend, be completely annoyed with them, and then have to perform a high-stakes scene right afterward? It seems impossible for most people, but for them, it was just another Tuesday. They weren't holding grudges, They were just letting it all out, getting the frustration off their chests, and then immediately jumping into character. That level of professional comfort, where you can be totally vulnerable and totally angry with someone at the same time, is rare. And it wasn't just about the lines in the script. Behind the scenes, they were navigating all sorts of personal things, like hiding pregnancies from producers or managing their own careers outside the show. These fights were just a symptom of how close they were, a way to navigate a very intense, high-pressure environment without letting the stress boil over into something destructive. According to the list, these weren't deep personal attacks. They were arguments about stupid stuff that actually strengthened their bond because it required them to constantly resolve issues and move forward. The list detailed that this love language of fighting extended to defending each other's joke ownership in the writer's room. If a producer tried to cut a line that Leah loved, Kevin would fight to keep it in, and vice versa. They functioned as a single unit, treating the script as their combined property. This shared ownership meant they were constantly analyzing scenes together, breaking down timing, and ensuring their characters felt like a cohesive, unbeatable team. It really puts a different perspective on what chemistry actually means. It's not just about looking good together on screen or having a nice smile. It's about that unspoken understanding, that ability to argue about a scene for 20 minutes and then, 5 seconds later, completely sync up for a take. Remini has often referred to James as her standard for what a co-star should be, and now it's easy to see why. He wasn't just a scene partner, he was someone she trusted implicitly, even when they were shouting. And this bond didn't stop when the cameras stopped rolling in 2007. According to recent reports, they have maintained ongoing contact, with sources suggesting they still keep in touch as recently as 2025. It's a testament to the fact that whatever happened on that set wasn't just acting. They formed a lifelong friendship that was built on that foundation of screaming, laughing, and absolute trust. To prove that this connection is still going strong, fans were treated to a 2023 selfie that showed them looking just as cozy as they did on the sitcom. It was a stark contrast to the dramatic media headlines that often plague Hollywood friendships, showing a genuine, enduring bond that hasn't faded with time. It seems that ruining her for life meant setting a bar for friendship and partnership that nobody else could quite reach. This whole story really redefines what we think of as sitcom magic. We watch these shows and think everyone is having a great time, but often, the best moments come from the most intense pressure and the weirdest working relationships. For Remini and James, it was the perfect storm of talent, banter, and a love language that just happened to involve a lot of yelling. Think about the friendships in your own life. Do you have that one person you can fight with about absolutely nothing, and still have them be the first person you call when something big happens? That's the kind of relationship they had. And it's why their on-screen chemistry felt so undeniable for so many years. It's almost like they knew that to make the show feel real to the audience, they had to make it feel real for themselves. They weren't just playing husband and wife, they were building a real-life dynamic that mirrored the show's chaos, but with a foundation of deep, abiding respect and affection. So the next time you watch a rerun of The King of Queens, think about that. Think about the screaming matches that happened right before they started kissing, and how that very frustration might be what made the scene work. It's a completely different way to look at television production, one that emphasizes raw emotion and real-world connection over polished perfection. And of course, that was just the beginning of their shared history. As their bond solidified on set, their real lives started to blur with the characters they were playing, leading to moments that were far more dramatic than anything in the script. Real-life intimacy leaks. According to reports from People, the line between Kevin James's and Leah Remini's on-screen marriage and their real lives completely vanished in 2003, when James essentially crashed her actual wedding to Angelo Pagan. Imagine looking out at your guests, expecting friends and family, and seeing your TV husband sitting in the front row, ready to celebrate a union that wasn't part of a script. It was a bizarre moment where fiction and reality just merged, and it signaled that this wasn't just a business relationship anymore. They had been friends since meeting at a Cuban restaurant back in 1996, well before the show even existed. So this wasn't just about sitcom loyalty. It was about genuine, deep affection. And get this, it wasn't just Kevin and Leah who got close. According to sources, their spouses bonded just as intensely. James's wife, Stefania de la Cruz, became close friends with Remini, and they were often seen hanging out together at industry events or just in their private time. This created a kind of double-date dynamic that extended far beyond the studio set, strengthening the connection between the two families. It shows that when Remini says James ruined her for other co-stars, she's talking about an entire lifestyle of trust and friendship, not just working together for a few hours a day. According to a 2024 interview with People magazine, Remini revealed that Stefania was actually pregnant with her first child during the later seasons, and they had to strategically hide it behind kitchen counters and large shopping bags. This shared secret added another layer of protective loyalty to their already tight-knit group. TV Insider reported that their bond was so tight that Kevin was one of the first people Leah told about her growing doubts regarding the Church of Scientology, years before she went public. While he couldn't fully understand the experience, he offered a safe harbor, providing emotional support that was totally detached from the pressures of her faith. According to Remini, Kevin just listened, refusing to judge or try to intervene, which provided massive emotional relief during a chaotic time in her personal life. Think about that for a second. Having a co-star at your wedding is a pretty significant boundary to blur, and it makes you wonder if that's a red flag for a chaotic personal life or proof of a truly unbreakable bond. For Remini and Pagan, it was clearly the latter, a sign that James was considered family. But it also sets a pretty impossible bar for anyone else in Hollywood trying to build a partnership. Because how do you compete with a friend who is so integrated into your life that they are crashing your wedding? Now, all good things have to come to an end, and for the King of Queens, that end came in 2007. Reports from The List indicate that the show wrapped up largely because James wanted to pursue a bigger movie career, having just starred in hits like Hitch and Paul Blart, Mall Cop. For Remini, this wasn't just the end of a job, it was the end of a daily anchor in her life. She has been surprisingly candid about how devastated she was when the show was canceled, explaining that it felt like losing a home base. The security of knowing she was going to work with her best friend every day was gone. The List reported that Remini felt a profound sense of abandonment during this period, not because of James personally, but because the structure of her professional life completely disintegrated. She had become so accustomed to the daily ritual of arguing and laughing with him that she struggled to find her footing in a Hollywood that suddenly felt much colder and less collaborative. Think about that impact. You're working with the same person for 9 years, creating something special, and then suddenly, it's just over. The abrupt shift from seeing someone every day to just being friends who text is massive. It really highlights how TV families often outlast some real ones, because first, you are spending more waking hours with your co-star than your actual partner during those long filming schedules. The end of the show was a major turning point, testing whether their bond was truly built on friendship or just on the convenience of working together. According to Nielsen ratings data, the show was still drawing over 7 million viewers per episode in its final season, making its abrupt end feel even more jarring to fans and cast members alike. Then, 10 years later, in 2017, they decided to reunite on screen for the show Kevin Can Wait. This was a massive deal for fans, a huge test of whether that old chemistry could be manufactured a decade later. Sources indicate that they were nervous, wondering if the magic was still there or if they had grown too far apart. But the second they started acting together again, it was like no time had passed at all. The banter was immediate, the energy was high, and it proved that the connection wasn't just a product of a specific moment in time, it was deeply ingrained. TV Insider detailed that their reunion on Kevin Can Wait required them to quickly establish a new dynamic, as Remini was now playing a police officer rather than a housewife. Despite the change in premise, the familiar comfort of their real-life friendship allowed them to bypass the awkwardness that often accompanies on-screen reunions, instantly recapturing the spark that made them famous. According to TV Guide in 2017, the network brought Remini in specifically to save the show, which was suffering a significant ratings dip. The reunion worked instantly, boosting viewership by over 25% for her appearance, proving their chemistry was still a massive draw for audiences. Remini mentioned in interviews that it felt like picking up right where they left off, without the stress of managing a show for 9 years, allowing them to just focus on the fun. They were able to laugh about the old days, and that genuine joy was evident in every scene they shared, bringing a nostalgic comfort to viewers who missed the dynamic duo. So you have to ask yourself, if you were in their position, would you want a co-star at your wedding, or would you keep that boundary strictly enforced? For some, it's a necessary buffer. For others, it's just not realistic when you're building something as intimate as a 9-year relationship. It seems that for James and Remini, the boundary was never really there to begin with. They were friends first and colleagues second, which is probably why the chemistry felt so authentic on screen. They were bringing their real-life trust into the characters they were playing, making the audience believe in a marriage that was actually just two people who really cared about each other. And this evolution of intimacy really sets up the next major challenge in their lives, one that was far more difficult than just navigating a TV show. However, their bond was about to be tested by something far more controversial than movie contracts or on-set spats. Their friendship was about to become a shield against a much darker force. The Ruined Reckoning. In a 2024 interview with Yahoo Entertainment, the true reason Leah Remini says Kevin James ruined her for life wasn't just about sitcom chemistry, but because he became a silent shield against the most powerful force in her life at the time: the Church of Scientology. Remini, who had been involved with the church since 1979, revealed that church officials were constantly eyeing James, wanting to recruit the massive star into their ranks. It was a high-stakes power move, and for a long time, Remini had to play a dangerous double game. She was technically an insider, but she knew that bringing her TV husband into that world would change their dynamic forever, and she absolutely refused to let it happen. Picture this. She is dealing with intense pressure from church elders to bring Kevin to events or introduce him to high-ranking officials, and all the while, she is actively blocking them. She was protecting him, not just as a friend, but because she recognized that their bond was too pure and too real to be tainted by the machinations of the church. According to sources close to the production, she would strategically schedule scenes, create distractions, or simply lie about Kevin's availability to keep the church recruiters at bay. It was a massive stressor that she carried entirely on her own, a hidden battle fought behind the scenes of those light-hearted episodes. Now here's where it gets interesting, because that protection wasn't just about dodging recruiters. It was about creating a safe space where they could actually do their jobs. Remini credits James with teaching her the fine art of sitcom timing, something she admitted she struggled with early on. She explained that he was a master of the pause, knowing exactly when to hold for a laugh and when to push through, and he patiently taught her these techniques over hundreds of episodes. Think about that for a second. The person who was her friend, her shield, was also actively making her better at her craft, pushing her to be more precise and confident in her comedic delivery. And get this, it wasn't just about acting skills. James actually helped her understand the business side of television too. He taught her about joke ownership and how to negotiate for better storylines, ensuring her character wasn't just a prop for his stand-up bits. It was a partnership based on mutual respect, not just a paycheck. This education paved the way for Remini to negotiate a massive 25% rate hike after King of Queens ended, a direct result of the confidence and knowledge she gained while working with him. She wasn't just acting anymore, she was running her own business, and James was the mentor who showed her how to do it. It really puts that quote about him ruining her for life into perspective. It wasn't about the kiss, and it wasn't about the laughter. It was about the fact that she had found a partner who provided safety, mentorship, and financial empowerment, all wrapped into one person. She has frequently stated in interviews between 2024 and 2025 that she has never found another co-star who could match that standard of trust and professional security. For Remini, now 54, and James, 60, that benchmark wasn't just high. It was insurmountable because it was built on a foundation of genuine, off-screen loyalty that Hollywood rarely produces. Now, you have to wonder, does one partner truly define your professional soul for the rest of your career? It seems that for Remini, the answer is a resounding yes. She wasn't just looking for another job after King of Queens. She was looking for a reflection of that safety and trust she had with James, and it just didn't exist elsewhere. This realization is what led to her candid admissions, not as a complaint, but as a statement of fact about how high the bar had been set. Think about the friendships in your own life. Is there someone who, because of what you've been through together, has set a standard for trust that nobody else can reach? That's what she's talking about. It's not just about liking someone, it's about knowing they would protect you when things got dangerous, even if they didn't fully understand the danger themselves. In a revealing moment from a 2024 podcast appearance, Leah detailed that the Ruin standard also applied to professional work ethic. She mentioned that Kevin taught her that a true partnership on set meant showing up early, knowing your lines, and being willing to look foolish for the sake of a laugh. She contrasted this with other co-stars who were more focused on lighting or camera angles than the actual scene interaction. That professional dedication, combined with his humor, made him, in her eyes, impossible to follow. Sources indicate that they are still always in touch, as of 2025, texting regularly and checking in on each other's families. The bond didn't die when the cameras stopped rolling. It just evolved into a private, enduring friendship that doesn't need to be in the spotlight to be real. It's a quiet contrast to the public drama that often surrounds celebrity relationships, proving that the deepest connections are often the ones you never see on camera. And it forces us to confront an uncomfortable, undeniable truth. Scientology almost stole her best ally, and we nearly lost this story. If Remini hadn't been strong enough to block those elders, the dynamic on that set would have been entirely different, and the trust she felt would have been compromised. But she stood her ground, and in doing so, she preserved the safety that allowed for that legendary chemistry to flourish. So, when you look at that 2023 selfie or hear her speak about him today, you're not just seeing two actors who liked each other. You're seeing two people who survived a high-pressure environment, navigated a dangerous organization, and came out the other side with a friendship that defines their careers. The ruin she speaks of is actually a testament to the fact that they created something unique, a partnership that set a standard so high it was impossible to match. Who is the best scene partner who set the bar for you, whether in acting, business, or just life? Was it someone you trusted implicitly, or someone who taught you how to play the game? The legacy of the King of Queens isn't just in the laughter. It's in the real-life bonds that were forged in the heat of that high-stakes environment. It's a story of protection, mentorship, and a friendship that stood up to the forces trying to tear it apart. And it explains why, for Leah Remini, Kevin James is not just a former co-star. He is the standard for trust, the ultimate safeguard, and the person who showed her what a true partnership looks like. The story is more than just a sitcom. It's a testament to the power of human connection. But the question remains, what happens to that standard in the modern era of television? Kevin James wasn't just a co-star, he was Leah Remini's architect, protector, and comedic soulmate who set an impossible standard for trust. As she confirmed in 2025, that bond ruined her for any other project because nothing else compares to the safety he provided. Was their explosive chemistry a red flag or the ultimate sitcom success story? What is your ruined for life pairing in TV history?